Hey guys, this is Eggy, and this is Eggy with the Math Egghead program. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on subtracting integers. Just a quick heads up, I have a couple of videos already on YouTube that go into the introduction of integers, irrational and rational numbers, subtracting, adding, multiplying, and division. Feel free to click at any point any of the other videos. This video is actually going to focus more on practice problems. If you want more of a lesson on integers, feel free to click on any of the links up above and also any of the videos on my YouTube channel. They're more lengthy and more of an explanation on how to add and subtract integers as well as multiplying and division and showing it on the actual number line. So if you feel that you got a grip on integers, feel free to always just continue watching this video. But if you feel you need a bit of a refresher, feel free to go ahead, like I said, and click on any of the links up above or any of the videos on my playlist. Let's get started. Hey guys, okay, so as I mentioned before, this video is going to be dealing with subtracting integers, practice problems. If you do want another video that has more of a lengthy explanation as far as what the rules are, how to use the number line, and when do you keep the sign, go ahead and click on any of the videos. I will link it up above if you want just a quick refresher. Let's get started on the first practice problem. So here, let's say we wrote 16 minus 8. I'm sure that instinctually you guys will know that it's 8, right? You guys know that from grade school. But let's say we had something like 7 minus 2. Now, if you guys remember the rules for subtracting, the first rule that you can think of is that all subtraction problems, you will go ahead and keep the number, keep the first number, change the subtraction to addition, and whatever second number you have, write the opposite of it. So what I mean by that would be is you keep the first number, you change the subtraction to an addition, and the opposite of negative 2 is 2. So we know it's 7 plus 2, which is 9. Now, let's say quickly you wanted to see that on the number line. We can definitely do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, even though I know you're not going to go there. Now, first number always tells us where we're starting. You're starting on positive 7. You're subtracting. Well, we know that we're subtracting, but what are we subtracting? We're subtracting a negative number, correct? So when you're subtracting a negative number, you know that you're continuing to go to the right. You're subtracting a negative number. So here it would be 1, 2, 8, 9. Now, just a quick reminder, a quick refresher here. Now, when you're adding, you're usually going to the right of 0 because remember, 0 is our starting point. Right? When you're subtracting, you're usually going to the left. But when you're subtracting and adding, these two are basic as, let's say for instance, if you were dealing with, excuse me here, let me just put this in a nice color so that you guys can tell the difference. Let's say we were adding and we're going this way. Usually this is when you're adding a positive number. And this is when you're subtracting a positive number. But if you're adding a negative number, you go this way. You go to the left of the actual number that you're starting on, or you can think of it as you're going to the left heading towards 0 and then going past. So you're adding a negative number. And then here it would be if you're adding a negative number, if you're subtracting a positive number, you already know I have it written here. If you're subtracting a positive number, you're going this way. and if you're subtracting of negative numbers. So let's say, for instance, let's start from the beginning. Let's say we have 7. We're subtracting, okay? So usually if we're subtracting, we're usually going to the left. But we're subtracting of negative number. So we know that we have to go 1, 2. Now I know that might sound a little confusing at first, but that's the rule, okay? If you want to do it by the number line, this is how you can definitely take a copy of it and write that down, pause the video, and definitely copy these rules. But if you just want a really quick way to remember subtracting the integers, you keep the first number, you change the subtraction into addition, and you change the second number into the opposite. Now I do want to show you guys a trick as well. Let's see here. Okay. Let's say with the same number we had 7 minus negative 2. The way that I like to think of it is, okay, it's 7 minus negative 2. I don't want to write it in the number line, and I'm confused by changing the first number and then changing the positive to a negative. So what I do is, I know that I have to do this. These two symbols, a negative times a negative equals a positive. And that's with any signs alike, right? So I know that I would have to combine these two. Oh, you have a little face there. So it would be 7, right? 7 plus 2 is 9. Let me show you another problem that deals with this, and then maybe you guys will see the trick, and then you guys can decide what's easier. Is it the actual rule? Is it the number line? But I will tell you guys that there are going to be times that you will receive a large number minus a large number, or minus a large integer minus another large integer, and you guys will not have time to draw out in the number line. So it's always best to either remember the rule or the trick that I'm showing you guys. So let's say we had something else. Let's say we had 6 minus negative 12. Well, I know that I have to pay attention because it's subtraction, right? So it's these two negative symbols, and I know a negative times a negative is positive. I have to combine. Think of the little face that you're making here. Face. So I would rewrite that and put 6 plus 2, which is 8. Let's do another problem. Let's say we had 10 minus negative 1. Okay, well, I see that it's a subtraction. It's two negative signs. I want to make a face. Okay, so then that becomes 10 plus 1, which is 11. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say we had let's say we had 5, excuse me. Let's say we had 15 minus negative 10. Okay, well, I see that there's a subtraction and there's two minus signs or two negative. There's the face again. So it would turn into 15 plus 10, which is 25. And it's still the same rule that we mentioned before. Keep the first number, change the subtraction into addition, and change the second number into the opposite. So negative 10, the opposite of negative 10 is positive 10, which is 25. Okay, guys, let's do another problem here really quick. I'm going to leave the rules there so that you guys can take a copy at any point. What if we had negative 15 minus 10? Then what would you do? Well, it's still two signs. It's just that you don't see the positive sign here. So we know it's a minus and a negative and a positive. So a negative times a positive is negative. Or if it was a positive times a negative, it's still negative because they're two signs that are different, right? Just like if you had positive times a positive, that would equal positive. When you're multiplying two signs that are alike, they're always positive. When you're multiplying two signs that are different, they're negative. Now let's try a couple of more because I know that it can be a little confusing here. Let's erase this. I'm going to keep that there. So let's say we had here negative 20 minus negative 5. How would you do that? Okay, well, there's a negative here, and there's a negative here. That makes a face because we have to combine them. So it's really negative 20 plus 5. Now, what would you do here? Well, when you're adding two integers with different signs, we find the difference of both numbers and keep the sign of the larger number. So here, the larger number would be 20. So the difference between 20 and 5, which really means 20 minus 5, that's 15, and minus, which is negative 15. Let's try another one here. Let's try the same numbers, but in a different pattern. Try something else. Let's try negative 20 plus negative 5, negative 20 minus negative 5, negative 20 minus 5, and let's say negative 20 plus negative 5. Okay. We have a positive 5 here, negative 5 here, negative, negative. I feel like I'm missing something here. And then we switch it here. Okay, let's try this. Pause the video, try this out, and then come back so we can work this out. Okay. So here we're adding two integers that have the same sign. So we know we keep the sign and add as normal, so it's negative 25. Here we're subtracting. So if you wanted to follow the rule, we would keep the first number, change the subtraction to a addition sign, and what's the opposite of negative 5? Positive 5. So here it would be negative 15. Here, again, follow the rule. Keep the first number, change the subtraction to an addition. What's the opposite of a positive 5? It's negative 5, and it would be negative 25 here. Here, again, keep the first number. We're adding two numbers with the same integer, so it would be, negative 5, so it would be negative 25. I wrote that twice here. Okay, that's fine. So, I know there's like another number that I'm missing. I just can't tell which one. Okay, guys, I noticed what I was missing. So a negative 20 plus a 5, you know that you're adding two different numbers with two different integers. So we find the difference, which is 20 minus 5, which is 15. Keep the sign of the larger number, so it's negative 15. So in this case, it was easier to follow the rule than to draw it out on the number line, because you would have had to draw the large number line, and you would have had to be like, okay, negative 20, negative 21, negative 22. And I know that during an exam, you will not have time for that. No. So another way that I usually like to think of my subtraction integers, let me show you a little scene that I have in my head that I always use when I'm minusing the integers. Let's say we were to have 100. That looks crazy. Okay, 100 minus negative 7, right? Just for explanation purposes. What I like to do is, I see this as subtraction and I see that there's a negative sign. So negative times a negative is positive. So we know 100 plus 7 is 107, right? Well, let's say it was 100 minus positive 7, right? We know automatically that that's 93. What if we had negative 100 minus negative 7? What would we do here? Again, we see the minus, that turns into a positive, so it's negative 100 plus 7, and we know it's negative 93, right? Well, what if you had 100 minus 107? Well, we know we have a positive sign here. What I like to think of is an extension of the subtraction rule. Now remember, the subtraction rule says keep the first number, change the subtraction into an addition, and then what is the opposite of the second number? The opposite of positive of 107 is negative 107, right? And then here we would just find the difference, which we know is negative 7. But what I like to think of is when you're subtracting and you try to make the addition problem happen, what I like to think of is it's 100 minus 107. The 107, you're kicking it up to here because you're trying to make space for the plus sign to wedge in here. So it's 100 plus, you kick the negative sign to 107, and we knew it was negative 7. For instance, let's say you wanted to do another problem. Let's say it was 5, right? 5 minus 23. And this was what I was explaining before in another video. Some people might say, okay, well then it's 23 minus 5. Those two problems are not the same at all. No! Okay, got it. I had a little breakdown. Those are not the same. So let's think about this first. Okay. If you had 5 minus 23, well, we know that the first number is smaller than the second number. So obviously the number is going to be in the negative. But if you're someone that's first starting off with integers, that would be your first reaction. Okay, well, I know that 23 minus 5 is easier to go ahead and set up. So 23 minus 5 is 18. So I'm going to put 18 here. That is incorrect. That is not the same. So what you would do here is, what I like to visually think of is, I want to kick this symbol up here because I need to make room for the addition sign. So keep the first number, change the subtraction to addition, or I have to make space for the addition sign, and it's negative 23. That is the correct way to think of it. Because remember what I said before, there are going to be times where you have larger numbers and you're not going to have time to go ahead and draw the number line out. And 23 minus 5 is not the same thing as 5 plus negative 23. This is going to be negative 18, which makes all the difference. Okay, guys? So I hope this video was helpful. Feel free to go ahead and reach out to me if you have a specific math problem that you would like for me to work out and show you on video. Go ahead and log in and become one of my Patreon on my Patreon page, where you have exclusive videos and have access to me, and you will be able to not only see more videos but also have a library of any question that you might have seen on the screen. And I hope you have a good one.